Recently, the Portland Trail Blazers have been decent. Over the past few years, they've been led by their star Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, who's become a deadly scorer. The team's salary situation isn't great, but they still have a team that's fun to watch, even if their success in the playoffs is kinda limited. However, the Blazers could have experienced a lot more success because at one point they were a team that had the most promising future in the entire league. But unfortunately, it all came crashing down before it really even started to come to fruition. And yes, I'm talking about the Big Three that was supposed to bring the Blazers back into championship conversation. The Big Three of LaMarcus Aldridge, Brandon Roy, and Greg Oden. What's good, ladies and gents? My name's Andy, and today we're going to take a look at how this Big Three of Aldridge, Roy, and Oden ended way too soon. First off, I'm just going to throw out these numbers and then you can interpret them any way you want. Aldridge, Roy, and Oden only played a total of 62 games together. In those 62 games, the Blazers' record was 50-12. That's freaking insane, especially when you consider that most of those games happened when they were still really young. For those who had any doubts that this trio was the biggest what if in the 2000s, well, I think you should erase those doubts. Alright, so let's rewind a bit and take a look at what happened. We'll start with Aldridge, who got drafted in 2006. Well, he was actually drafted by the Bulls, but then the Blazers kinda robbed them, in that trade where they sent Tyrese Thomas, who ended up becoming a bust. The Blazers also selected Brandon Roy in the same draft, at number 6. Both of them made a name for themselves pretty quickly in the NBA. Roy won Rookie of the Year, while Aldridge was coming off the bench, but he showed flashes of his talent. Despite both of them playing well, the Blazers were not that good. Around this time, the team as a whole still had a bad reputation. This was a transition period where the franchise was trying to move on from that whole jail Blazers era thing, and into a new era by signing solid veterans and role players. Players who were not only good on the court, but also represented Portland as a city in a positive manner. The 2006-07 season was that transition period. And the Blazers finished with a 32-50 record, which I guess wasn't too bad actually. But luckily for them, they managed to snatch the number 1 pick of the 2007 draft where they chose Greg Oden. I know a lot of people now say that it was a terrible choice picking him over Durant, but at the time, Oden was supposed to be the number 1 pick. Almost every mock draft, every analyst had him going number 1 to the Blazers. So, I don't think it's fair to criticize them for the pick when Oden was indeed the best prospect that year. Unfortunately, Oden sat out his first season because of knee surgery, which would be a bad sign for things to come. Anyway, over the next few years, both LaMarcus Aldridge and Brandon Roy would improve a lot. Aldridge basically doubled his scoring output in his second year in the league, while Roy became an all-star. The 2007-08 season saw the Blazers improve to a 41-41 record, but still missed the playoffs. Fast forward to the 2008 offseason and Oden was finally ready to play. But Roy had a small problem with his knee. He had to get surgery to remove some loose cartilage in his left knee, and although this seemed like a minor issue, it would also be a bad sign too. Regardless, he was healthy by the time the season started, and the trio of him, Aldridge, and Oden finally took the court together. Oden played 61 games in the 2008-09 season, which was very promising. He only played around 20 minutes a game and averaged just 9 points and 7 rebounds, but there were a couple of games where he looked really good, like he had superstar potential. He had a game where he had 22-10 and another game where he had 24-15. And defensively, he already looked great right away. So Roy and Aldridge continued doing what they usually do, and the Blazers finished the season with an incredible 54-28 record. They were one of the biggest surprises that season because nobody thought that this young team would be that good, but they were. As I mentioned earlier, Oden played limited minutes and did not score that much, but all three of them complemented each other very well. Aldridge liked to take his opponents on the perimeter and developed a good mid-range shot, so it opened up the driving lanes for Roy and also let Oden do work in the post. Keep in mind, back then, a power forward that could shoot the mid-range was very rare, but also very valuable, and Aldridge was just a very skilled, very versatile player. He still is today. Anyway, the Blazers lost in the first round of the playoffs, but everybody noticed how good they were. I mean, look at it this way. You got two players who are 23 and 22 years old, and then you have a 20-year-old #1 pick who people projected to be the next generational big man. And they just led their team to 54 wins in a really tough Western Conference. That sounds ridiculous. The Blazers were going to be the next great team, the next great dynasty. They had the brightest future in the NBA and the best young core of players at the time. At least, that's what everyone thought. After Roy's incredible 2009 season where he averaged 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game, the Blazers signed him to a 4-year max contract over the summer. And then Aldridge was signed to a 5-year, $65 million deal. They made it clear that these two guys were going to be the future of the franchise. But as for Oden, he was having a great start to the season, but then he suffered a leg fracture, just over a month into the season. This caused him to miss the rest of the 2009-10 season, and apparently, this would actually be the last time we saw him in a Blazers jersey. 1 year later, Oden realized that his leg wasn't healing properly, and he experienced more recurring knee issues too. He had to get arthroscopic surgery in 2012 and then another microfracture surgery as well, which would turn out to be his third microfracture of his career. At just 23 years old too. Oden had the knees of a grandpa. Part of the reason could have been caused by his uneven legs. Apparently his right leg is slightly shorter than his left, which forced him to always walk with a limp. And if you're playing basketball at the highest level, it's gonna cause some problems. Most of Oden's leg injuries were on his left leg because he's probably overcompensating on that side of his body. But yeah, for the next 3 seasons, Oden did not play a single game, and his career with the Blazers was over. He did try to make a comeback in 2014 with the Miami Heat, but that didn't work out either, and that pretty much sums up his career. Anyway, the Blazers won 50 games in the 2009-10 season, but lost in the first round again. As for Roy, he was coming off of 3 straight All-Star selections by this time. However, he started to show serious signs of knee problems. Around the 2010 playoffs, he had to get another knee surgery. And then later on, it was discovered that he had a degenerative knee condition that slowly chipped away at his cartilage over the last few years, and he just could not play anymore. He went from averaging over 20 a game to just 12 points a game on career-low shooting percentages in the 2010-11 season. Although Roy did have one last great performance in the 2011 playoffs. In Game 4 against the Mavericks, he led a furious rally. The Blazers were down by 23 points, but Roy led them back into the game with some ridiculous clutch shots. They would win the game, but eventually lose the series. This game from Roy gave people hope that he could return to his former self. But actually, the opposite happened. Roy was forced to retire because his knees degenerated so much that he literally had no cartilage at all in there. He was 26 years old. And just like Oden, he tried to make a comeback, but it also failed. So now, Aldridge became the only guy left of this once promising Big Three, and he became their franchise player, but mainly because of circumstance. Even though they lost Roy and they lost Oden, the Blazers were still able to surround Aldridge with some good young players who complemented him very well, and the Blazers still remained competitive. Drafting Lillard was the final piece for the team, and in 2014, the Blazers won their first playoff series in like 14 years. They had some good years with Aldridge and Damian Lillard, but then in the 2015 offseason, Aldridge would leave and sign with the Spurs. That officially marked the end of that era. And that's all, folks. That sums up the story of how the most promising Big Three never put it together. Injuries suck, and we all know it, especially since the Blazers have had a history of terrible luck. It's amazing to me that the organization is still able to put together a competitive team. Right now, they're still very fun to watch, but they're not legit contenders. Instead, they've become the biggest what if in recent history. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope y'all enjoyed that video. Thank y'all for the support, and I hope to see some of you there. I'll see you next time. Peace.